no time for regrets. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect your soul. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above the sky. We are heroes tonight. Show any fear. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect your soul. We are heroes tonight. We will fly up.
Good evening, everybody. This is 12 Gauge. I'd like to welcome everybody to my channel. If you haven't been here before, welcome. I hope you enjoy and find something that interests you, something that is able to be objective and not pushing narrative or an agenda. Hit a like, comment, subscribe. You know, I've had some subscribers, they've commented, I've enjoyed reading the comments, and it's always nice to get kind words. Or, you know, if you watch one of my videos and I make a mistake or the information's not correct, it's okay. I can take constructive criticism. Just don't be rude. All right? So, I know there's not a lot going on in the Idaho 4 case that I really want to discuss right now as far as trials and things of that nature. I mean, there's documents and everything coming out, but I'm not one of those document people that break stuff down and discuss things. I'm more analytical, where I try to piece things together. And if you notice, the title of my video is called Koberger, Is He Like the Gainesville Ripper? Well, I did a video a while back on the Gainesville Ripper, and it caught my interest because I could see the similarities between the two. So tonight, I'd like to kind of go through the Gainesville Ripper history. His name is Danny Rowland, that was his name. And I'd like to go through the history, even though it's probably been talked about a multitude of times. If you hear a dog barking in the background, please don't stress. It just, my buddy. Okay, the true story of Danny Rowland, the Gainesville Ripper, who inspired the hit movie Scream. Over the course of 4 days, serial killer Danny Rowland terrorized the college students of Gainesville, Florida, in a murderous rampage. Danny Rowland lived an unhappy life. A tortured soul since birth, Rowland, aka the Gainesville Ripper, passed on the horrifying abuse he'd endured onto his victims. There's Mr. Rowland. Over the course of 4 days in 1990, Rowland went on a rampage where he murdered 5 University of Florida students in a spree that terrified the nation. But despite huge media coverage, Danny Rowland was never actually caught for the murders. It was only when he was arrested for an unrelated burglary charge that he confessed to some of the most horrific murders in Florida's history and was unmasked as the Gainesville Ripper. Then, a few short years later, the Gainesville murders became even more infamous when they helped inspire the classic horror movie Scream. I've seen that movie, but I don't remember the premises of it. I mean, I remember it being kind of cheesy. This is the grisly true story of Danny Rowland, the Gainesville Ripper. Danny Rowland's upbringing before becoming the Gainesville Ripper. Danny Harold Rowling was born on May 26, 1954, to Claudia and James Rowling in Shreveport, Louisiana. Unfortunately for Danny, his father never wanted children. He was a cop and he constantly abused his wife and children. Danny was only 1 year old when his father abused him for the first time. He was beaten because he wasn't crawling properly. When Kevin, Danny's younger brother, was born in 1955, the abuse only worsened. Claudia tried to escape the toxic marriage, but time and again she returned. When Danny failed the third grade for too many absences due to illness, his mother had a nervous breakdown. Danny's school counselor described him as suffering from an inferiority complex with aggressive tendencies and poor impulse control. If you don't understand this right here, aggressive tendencies and poor impulse control, that is a what they call a criminogenic trait, meaning that most criminals they possess that. Those aggressive tendencies and poor impulse control would foreshadow Danny's murderous rage later on in his life. By age 11, Danny Rowland picked up music to cope with his abusive father. He played guitar and sang hymn-like songs. About this time, his mother was committed to a hospital after she had slit her wrist. Danny then picked up drugs and alcohol, which only worsened his already fragile mental state. So let's look at Koberger compared to Danny in the early ages based on the material that we have about his upbringing. And I will show some examples here in a little bit about the similarities of their upbringing. It was stated in an article that Koberger had lack of empathy towards anybody. He couldn't feel empathy. He obviously was doing heroin. We don't know if he was drinking. We don't know if he was doing other drugs. But think about this. Danny Rowland picked up drugs and alcohol, and this only worsened his already fragile mental state. How could Koberger's mental state be if he was able to clean himself up and then dive right on into the criminology part of his life? Because one thing about criminals is they're chameleons to the core. They can be just like everybody else if they emulate their behaviors on what they see. Like if they want to be normal, they're gonna pick out somebody that's normal and they're gonna perfect their mannerisms, their words, things of that nature, but it doesn't mean that their mental state's gonna be secure. And that's where the drugs and the alcohol and the fantasies of getting revenge and these type of things, that's where they grow. At age 14, Danny's neighbors caught him peeping into their daughter's room. Of course, his father beat him for doing that, but Danny tried to stay in control and he attended church and he struggled to hold down steady work. He then enlisted. So at 14, he was already peeping, which is another criminogenic behavior, voyeurism. At 14, the Navy wouldn't take him, so he joined the Air Force, but the military provided him no comfort. He eventually quit the Air Force after too much drug use, which included taking acid more than 100 times. Following his discharge from the military, Danny managed to marry and begin what appeared to be a normal life. If we remember some of the earlier things that were stated about Koberger is he wanted to be a policeman. So he was doing the physical agility, all those things that was going to eventually catapult him into being a police officer. But do you think he was using drugs at that point? Maybe, maybe not. Probably not, because he was physically fit and he was losing weight, he was boxing, he was running, he was doing all these things. Then the cycle of abuse continued. At age 23, after being with his wife for 4 years, she separated from him after he threatened to kill her. This was in 1977. Danny turned his devastation into anger and raped a woman who closely resembled his ex wife. Later that year, he killed a woman in a car accident, which troubled him further. So he turned his devastation into anger and raped a woman who closely resembled his ex wife. The rise of the Gainesville Ripper. Danny Rowland's Florida victims: Tracy Inez Pauls, Sonia Larson, Manuel Taboda, Krista Hoyt, and Christina Powell. And you notice they all have that brunette look. They have the brown eyes. I believe the guy with just collateral damage, but still, nonetheless, he was killed. So look at this: two women, a guy, and another woman. Same outcome as what the Idaho 4 was. He managed to kill five, where supposedly Koberger did four. At 6'2", Danny Rowland was a massive, powerful man. From the late 1970s to 1990s, Rowling committed a series of petty crimes and thefts. He turned to a series of armed robberies to get cash and subsequently was in and out of the criminal justice system in Louisiana, Mississippi, Georgia, and Alabama. A lot of people say that Koberger is about 6'1" to 6'3". And he was an avid runner, took up boxing, so I'm sure he was no weakling either, you know. Um, he did steal his sister's iPhone, which he was later arrested for. He pawned it for drugs. So, it's not identical. I'm not trying to say these two guys are identical. I'm just pointing out the similarities, okay? He broke out of prison several times and was fired and quit jobs just as frequently. Meanwhile, the bodies of three victims were found in Shreveport: 24-year-old Julie Grissom, her father Tom Grissom, and her nephew, 8-year-old Sean, who were all killed around this time Danny lost his last job and returned home in vengeance. So it sounds like Danny gets some kind of shunning type behavior, some kind of failure esque mentality, and he takes it out on other people by killing them. Danny Rowland broke in May of 1990. He shot his 50-year-old father twice and nearly killed him. Though he survived, James Rowling had lost an eye and an ear. So he broke in the May of 1990, almost killed his father. Danny then changed his identity with papers he stole after breaking into someone's house. He fled Shreveport and took a bus to Sarasota, Florida, to start a new life as Michael Kennedy Jr. in late July of 1990. But running away to Florida didn't cure Danny and made him worse. Of course, wherever you go, there you are, and you bring all your baggage with you. On August 24, 1990, Danny broke into the home of Sonia Larson and Christina Powell, both incoming freshmen at the University of Florida in Gainesville. Rowley followed them home, broke into their house, and simply overpowered them. Thus began the streak of the Gainesville Ripper. He doesn't look like a powerful man. Right there, he looks like a beaten down man, like he had the world on his shoulders. Rowling covered both of the young women's mouths with duct tape before he bound their hands. He forced one young woman to perform oral sex on him before he raped, stabbed, and killed her. He returned to Sonia's dead body and raped her again. Rowling went as far as to cut off the girl's nipples and to keep one as a grisly trophy of his actions. The next day, Rowling killed Krista Hoyt in much the same fashion. He broke into her residence, and after he raped her, he removed her nipples and placed them beside her. Rowling cut off her head and sat her upright on the edge of her bed. The Gainesville Ripper put her head on a bookshelf. So, I know this is disturbing and it's very graphic, but this is what real crime is all about. It's not about the imaginary, you know, picturesque scene that we think in our head. It's very bloody and very gory. One thing about Danny Rowland that I'm sure is going to talk about, he positioned the women he murdered, he would pose them. And recently, probably about a month ago, if that, it was stated that Kaylee was against the wall and slumped over. That is how she died. Where before we were told she had fallen and landed on Maddie. So was she positioned? Did the perpetrator position her body to pose her? Was Ethan and Xana posed? Were they taken from whatever position they landed and posed in a way where it would be even more horrific when you found them? I'm sure we'll know at the trial. By now, news of the murders had spread across the university. Authorities put out as much information as they could to try to catch the suspect, and the students slept in groups and took every precaution they could think of. Despite this, the Gainesville Ripper killed one more time. On August 27, Rowling attacked Tracy Pools and Manuel Taboda, both 23. He killed Taboda while he slept. Then he killed Tracy. Authorities feel Rowling did not manage to mutilate these bodies because he may have been in danger of getting caught or was otherwise interrupted. These murders all occurred less than 2 miles from each other around the University of Florida. The university consequently canceled classes for a week. Students bought baseball bats with them everywhere they went, and no one went out alone. During the day or the night, students triple locked their doors and some slept in shifts so someone was awake at all times. By the end of August, thousands of students left campus and around 700 never came back because they feared for their lives. I don't blame them. Danny Rowland's father, who was a 20-year-old veteran cop of Shreveport Police Department, had not only taught his son how to take abuse all of his life, but he also taught Danny how to cover his tracks. Police couldn't find enough evidence at crime scene to implicate Danny Rowland. Instead of leaving the duct tape on the dead body, Danny disposed of it downstairs to get rid of any fingerprints. Danny also used cleaning solvents on the dead body to remove traces of semen. Some of the female bodies were left in sexually suggestive positions, which offered authorities a clue into the killer's method. And there's the names. The Gainesville Ripper continued to steal from homes and gas stations until he was finally caught in Ocala after a high-speed chase. He was wanted for the robbery of a Winn-Dixie, as authorities still did not know that he was the Gainesville Ripper. That was on September 8th, 2 weeks after the murders. The triple murder and Shreveport of Julie Grissom, her father and nephew, clued the Gainesville police into their suspect. Grissom's corpse was left in a sexual position. She was also stabbed to death. It wasn't until January 1991, more than 4 months after the murders, that police caught a break. Because of the similarities of the murders in Shreveport and Gainesville, Florida investigators saw DNA of prisoners from Shreveport who were incarcerated. Danny Rowling DNA was similar enough to the DNA left at the Gainesville murder scene to charge him with murder. Rowling confessed to being the Gainesville Ripper. Prosecutors found enough evidence to convict him, and he was subsequently executed on October 25th, 2006, in Florida. A total of 47 people witnessed the execution of the Gainesville Ripper, which is a double the capacity of the viewing room. Rowling's last meal consisted of a lobster tail served with drawn butter, butterfly shrimp with cocktail sauce, a baked potato with sour cream and butter, strawberry cheesecake, and sweet tea. On Rowling's deathbed, the 52-year-old sang a hymn-type song that rambled on for 5 verses. He caught on the tunes of his childhood when he learned how to play guitar to find peace before his execution. But that's not quite the end of the story. So let's go ahead and see how it coincides with Mr. Koberger when he was a younger guy. Okay, there's Mr. Koberger right there upon his arrest. It says in May 2023, Koberger was indicted by a grand jury for the murder of the 4 students. We all know that. He's waived his right to a speedy trial. We know that. I never heard that before. It says Koberger claimed he was shocked at the allegations against him. You know, since we have just talked about Danny Rowland, you know, Koberger didn't really have an abusive upbringing, as far as I can tell, what I've read, what I've seen. Other than this, it says Koberger may have been bullied, but some allege he was a bully himself. At least one individual who knew Koberger when they were young recalled Koberger as being quiet but friendly, and that he was bullied by peers over his weight. He was bullied a lot. It started because of his weight, and it was mainly by females. He was pretty big. He was very quiet, very to himself. He was very into his books. He was really sweet and really quiet. So, based on what I just told you about Danny Rowling, Danny was quite the opposite. He was very demonstrative, and when he didn't get his way, he lashed out. This says quiet and sweet. That means he didn't really. I mean, if we look at that, that would mean that he didn't engage with people. He was bullied a lot because of his weight. Others who knew Koberger didn't recall him being bullied at all. Casey Amps, who was 2 years ahead of Koberger in high school in Pleasant Valley, said she didn't remember Koberger ever being bullied and alleged that while Koberger was always nice to her, he actually bullied her brother at times. So, what does this really mean? He was bullied, he bullied others. Here's the good stuff right here. I know that he had anger issues and he would have outbursts and stuff. I never saw them face to face. My brother said that when Brian would get angry with him, he would kind of gaslight him and get physically aggressive. Brian never got physically aggressive with my brother, but he was the kind of person who would smash things or punch a wall or do something like that. How many of us have ever done that? I think a lot of us have had anger issues when we were younger. Does that mean that he's a serial killer? Does that mean he's a killer at all? Could be, could not be. It says that these individuals that in 2023 that he and Koberger's friendship ended after what began as a playful ribbing and jabbing escalated to a mean-spirited bullying, including Koberger allegedly putting Thomas in a headlock. Over time, it got so bad that I just shut down when I was around him. I eventually just told him, had to cut ties with him. Wow. So it painting a picture that Mr. Koberger was a hothead. It says one of his college classmates recalled him frequently taking contrarian viewpoints in classes and getting into heated arguments with other doctor's students. The classmate said Koberger seemed to have more disagreements with women, including one incident that led to a female doctoral student storming out of the classroom after accusing Koberger of mansplaining. So it sounds like he's all about control. You know, they really don't talk about his education that I've heard, but it says here he earned a bachelor's degree in psychology at a local community college near Eastern Pennsylvania. He received a master's degree in criminal justice from DeSales University. I mean, they do talk about it. I'm just saying they don't break it down to exactly what he learned and what was the specifics, you know? It says he was super curious, probably the most curious person who you'll ever meet. He was really into psychology, how people thought and whatnot. He's always been really into that kind of stuff. Of course he was. He put a questionnaire out basing his questions on how would you feel if you committed this crime? How would you feel if you were breaking into a house, this, that, and the other, you know, the one that he posted on Reddit. There it is. A convict to participate in what was said, study sanctified by the university, how emotions and psychological traits influence decision making when committing a crime. You know, there's a lot of people that had something to say about Mr. Koberger. I didn't realize there was this many people. The next one said the Kobergers seemed rather interested in serial killers and developing theories on what happened at crime scene based on photos presented in class, but that his behavior didn't raise any red flag for her at the time. At the time, it seemed as if it was just a curious student, so the question felt odd. We didn't think much of it because it fit our curriculum, you know? He was in there for that. Why would it be weird? Casey recalled Koberger being interested in criminal justice when he was still in high school, but she believes his addiction delayed his plan to go to college to study that subject. So there it is. You know, his addiction was taking place. He was trying to find himself, obviously, so it took a little time to get himself together. He was interested in criminal justice. We know that because he wanted to be a police officer. Later on, after he got all the education, he wanted to dabble into forensics. He interviewed for a job with local police in April 2022 as a graduate research assistant, according to the email. He did have the interview. He sent an email, thank you, after his interview. Chief Jenkins, it was a great pleasure to meet you today and share my thoughts and excitement regarding the research assistantship for public safety. I look forward to hearing from you. Jenkins responded, great to meet and talk with you as well. I don't know if y'all remember this one, but this came out fairly early where a local bar issued a warning to Mr. Koberger about him badgering women, waitresses at the bar, and how he had to be asked to leave. It really doesn't put much of anything because it doesn't. This is hearsay. He says he spoke about the slain student during his extradition. Though Koberger largely remained silent after he was charged, he seemed really nervous. He was narrating to himself everything that was happening. At one point, he was saying something to himself like, I'm fine, this is okay. Like he was reassuring himself that this whole thing wasn't awful. While Koberger didn't speak directly to officers about the case, the police source said he did make an offhand comment about it. He did say, it's really sad what happened to them, but he didn't say anything more. The source said, he's smarter than that. He was read his Miranda rights during his arrest and cannot be questioned after the case without an attorney present. Supposedly, he followed all three female victims on Instagram and messaged one. He visited the Idaho Student Union before the murders. What does that have anything to do with the murders? You know, I've gone to the student union where I used to attend college, and that really doesn't mean anything. He allegedly had photos of a victim on his phone. I never heard of this or remember this. It said he had more than one picture of her. It was clear he was paying attention to her. March 2023, an unsealed search warrant revealed items that were taken from Koberger's parents' home after he was arrested. And this is where it becomes, kind of okay, we got a lot of stuff here. Two knives, a Glock handgun, and three empty magazines. Black face mask, black gloves, a black hat, green leafy substance in a plastic bag, a book with underlining on page 118, and the suspect's AT&T bill. So there's a lot of black stuff there. Black mask, black glove, black hat, and a Glock handgun with three empty magazines. You know, very early on, a lot of information has surfaced about Mr. Koberger. Um, did he do it alone? How did he do it so quickly? If you've never had a Whataburger, you need to have a Whataburger. Um, anyways, how did he do it so quickly? You know, I'm going to speculate here for a moment, okay? And this is just speculation based on that search warrant. That Glock, if indeed he was the guy, did he use a gun with no ammunition in it as a threat to hold people at bay while he did what he did? The two knives, were they hunting knives? Were they paring knives? Were they fishing knives? Steak knives? I mean, they didn't say. Black mask, black this, black that. The individual was seen clad all in black. But one thing that, after going over Mr. Rowling history and then going over Brian's stuff, you know, Rowling confessed after he was arrested. And then he was, his DNA was found, as we read earlier. and all that stuff. So, at one point, do you think that Brian's going to confess? You think he's going to be given a plea bargain? I know the death penalty is on the table, but that can always be taken off the table and changed into a life sentence if he gives the account of what happened that night. This case is so confusing that you really don't know which way it's going to go. I hope we find out exactly how it happened. You know what I mean? How it happened and any exculpatory evidence. You know, people talk about these words on these platforms. They use a lot of nefarious as a word. It's almost like every week it's a different word that somebody hears and they just run with it. Well, it's not like anything nefarious. It's not nefarious. It's not nefarious. Okay, we understand what the word nefarious means. Um, but there is a difference between a theory and a hypothesis. And what other people are doing basically is they're forming hypotheses because they say, well, I just want to ask questions. Okay, well, ask questions. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's your channel, it's your business, it's your platform. But do understand that just by asking questions, and you're only doing what I did tonight. You're only putting the pieces of every little piece of information that you get does not always going to fit to prove probable cause. The PCA would just enough information to get a judge to sign off so that they could arrest them. And after that, they did more investigation. So we don't even know what kind of evidence they've gotten since he was arrested. Because, I mean, 400 witnesses, that is a word right there, witnesses. It's not 400 people that we hope know something. No, this is 400 people that witnessed elements of this crime. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of individuals with something to say. That's a lot of individuals whose stories you have to sift through to make sure they're telling the truth and they're not embellishing things that aren't true. But why would people lie about this? You know what I mean? Why would people, once they're interviewed by Ann Taylor, why would they lie? What would cause them to lie? Nothing would. Unless they were trying to protect somebody. But I don't want to go there. I don't want to get into that speculated version of what I would do or what I would think because nobody knows what another individual, what their motive is behind their intent. You know, intent is thinking about something, motive is acting on it. The mens rea, as far as the emotional place in your mind that causes you to commit this crime. We've never heard a motive. which we don't have to have one, but hopefully in the trial we'll hear a motive because people have been asking for a while. Did he know these kids? Did he stalk them? Did he plan this? Or was it just one of the many places that he stalked out? And this is the first one that gave him opportunity to commit his crime. Was he a voyeur? Did he peep in the windows? Was he ever caught looking in the windows? Was he ever caught driving by before? 12 times. Was he really in the neighborhood? Did somebody notice his white Elantra? Did he know anybody that lived at that home? These are some of the questions that hopefully get answered once the trial comes. And like I said at the very beginning, there are similarities between these two people. One was a lot more aggressive due to his upbringing and abuse. And I'm sure we're going to hear a lot about Koberger and his upbringing and how he was raised and whether he had mommy or daddy issues or both. Because the Gainesville Ripper obviously had mommy issues because he couldn't stand dad. So he was probably mad at mom for staying with dad. So therefore, that's why he took it out on his victims whenever he felt rejected because he was killing women. He wasn't killing men. He only killed one man. And I believe that was collateral damage. Brian, on the other hand, was described like a giant teddy bear. He was friendly, he was nice. But how bad did the drug change him? Mentally, how bad did his thinking change? Was his brain shrunken? Did his brain change the physical composition where his thought process was not easily controlled, where he became fixated, obsessed with what he was going to do? Because it's easy to do. I'm getting my bachelor's in criminal justice. It's easy to get fixated on this stuff. It really is. I watch tons and tons and tons and tons of true crime because I want to know what they're talking about in my textbook. But do I want to commit a crime? No. Do I have that Jumanji drum in my chest going? Tum, 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 tum? You got to go commit this crime. You got to go lash out, and this person wronged you, so go take care of them. No. That's why whenever individuals think of the mindset of a serial killer, they can't really understand it because it's not rational. We try to rationalize how Mr. Koberger would have done it, what he would have done, what he would have thought. Was he hurt? Was he seeking revenge? Was he doing it? It's not that simple sometimes, but sometimes it is. But you have to stay open minded because you might not ever know, I might not ever know what causes people to snap, you know, like the Kansas City shooting the other day. What caused them to have a dispute at a celebration and shoot up the place? What causes people to meet somebody on social media And then by the end of the night, that date is deceased. What causes people to stalk out a victim in a parking lot, walk into a Target with them, walk out, abduct them, kill them, and dump them on the side of the road? What causes people to do this? If we knew we could, it would be solved. A lot more murders would be solved. Less than 50% are ever solved. So that tells you that it's really difficult to catch a killer unless you catch them red handed or unless you have videotape that ties into this, that, and the other, which they might have in this case. They might have piece by piece by piece by piece by piece walk you from his apartment all the way to 1122 King Road, seeing him exiting the vehicle, entering the vehicle, taking off at a high rate of speed, catching him on camera all the way, and then finally getting back home at 5:30 in the morning. Not everything has to be nefarious. Some things are just what they are. They're just beyond understanding. And you can be a smart person. I'm a smart person. I read a lot. I study a lot, but doesn't mean that I know everything. And when I see other creators with their analytical videos, I enjoy those because it makes you think. It puts another realm of understanding into your brain where you can say, well, you know what? I can kind of see that. There's some people that I watch, the Chaos Sector, Unfiltered Lucky. I just added a new one the other day. I can't think of the name. It's Woke New World or something like that. If I got the name wrong, I'm sorry. But she was in the video before this one. I was commentating on her research. And some other ones that are out there, they do have some good speculatory questions, but there's no follow through. They're just like that lead you to the da 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 da, and then they cut it off. We'll talk about it tomorrow. We'll talk about it tomorrow. We'll talk about it tomorrow. And tomorrow never comes because there's really no answer. That's why I created this video tonight because there's no information that I care to divulge over and over and over that's already been talked about. Because I believe that due to Brian killing 4 people, if he indeed did it, he is a serial killer. And he probably would have continued killing had he not gotten arrested. Or maybe he has been a serial killer for a long time. Maybe we're going to find out some things that nobody has even thought of. One last thing, and I'll close it out because I've gone way past my 30 minutes. Each time that Dylan opened that door, I've often thought, because people have asked, well, how did she know to open the door 3 times? Well, she was opening the door because she was hearing all the ruckus, all the screams for help. And she was probably trying to decide whether to go or whether to stay. Because as much as you want to help those people that are your roommates, I heard one person say very early on, just because they're your roommate does not mean that they're your best friends. And that's real talk right there. Just because they all lived in that house doesn't mean that they were all close. We know that two of them were, and then the other two were a couple, so they were close with each other. But were they really close with the other two? Did they really have a ride or die type closeness? So each time she opened the door, was she merely checking that what she was hearing was really what she was hearing? Or was she wanting to come out and investigate, but it was still going on? And it wasn't until she saw the guy clad in black that she finally understood, hey, there's something bad happening. This isn't a joke. This isn't a party. This isn't party sounds. Well, you guys, I hope you've enjoyed my stream. If you do, please leave me some comments. Be kind. And if not, that's fine too. I'm not thin skinned. But like I said, my channel, my thoughts, my investigative mindset. Until next time, tell your friends. Come check me out. My plan is to hopefully get enough people so that we can have a live stream. Hopefully that happens soon. Well, I'm out of here.